Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Jay Kuper with Kuper Sotheby's International Realty. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have you. We have a very special guest tonight. Jenna Saucedo-Herrera is here with San Antonio Economic Development Foundation. She's the president and chief executive officer there, and we are really privileged to have her. She is very busy these days, especially in light of all that's going on, helping drive our city to some great things. So we're excited that you are here, Jenna. Thank you for being here, and we appreciate your time tremendously.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you again.
Absolutely. Jenna, for our brokerage, has been a great advocate, but also given us great information over time. And we are thrilled tonight to open this event up to our clients, friends, family, and the people of San Antonio and our surrounding communities, because what Jenna has to say is very important, I think, for us all to hear. I know we're in a bit of a period of uncertainty on some level, but at the same time, our community is a very strong one. And I think we've banded together in a really significant way. And Jenna has been a tremendous leader in that effort. So tonight we're going to be asking Jenna some questions and just getting her overall wisdom for what's going on in our market. Not just from a real estate perspective, but just what our community is doing. And so we will get into that shortly. One thing I want to bring up and give you a couple of statistics for those that have tuned in tonight on the real estate market. We know that if you probably received the invitation this evening, it was either through the EDF or through Kuper Sotheby's International Realty. And so we're thankful again that you're here for that. But I did want to give some statistics about what we've got going on as a real estate company and as the real estate market in San Antonio. Whether you're a homeowner or you're a home renter, how the market is working in San Antonio and our surrounding communities is important to all of us. It speaks to the health of our community. So one of the things that I think is a key statistic that I'll lead off with is overall transaction volume has really not dipped significantly in our market, even amidst the complete shutdown and or shelter in place ordinances that I think we've all been abiding to keep our friends, family, and neighbors safe. That shows a very resilient market and a market that continues to want to move, grow, and do in our community. And that's really, really important statistic. It's actually farther past the positive impact that I would have even thought that we would have had as a company. The number of homes that we listed in the month of April surpassed the number of homes we listed in April of 2019. This is with full shelter in place for all of us, but this is again meaning we've got clients, friends, family that want to list their home and buy a new home, predominantly in San Antonio, New Braunfels, Bernie, surrounding community. Again, this is tremendous. Again, we know we're all been impacted in ways that I think are new for everyone who's watching. I think nobody's experienced anything quite like this, but this is great for our communities. This has also been true just for our community at large. We're seeing a large uptick in people actually putting homes under contract, buying new homes, is up about 7% year over year. So year to date, when we look at this, we're seeing this very positive activity, one that I think a lot of us couldn't explain or wouldn't think would be true in light of what's happened, but is absolutely impacting our communities in positive ways. So just a little bit of rundown there. Tonight also, I want to make sure I give credit for who's brought this event together. Of course, we're pleased to do this as a real estate brokerage firm, but I also want to give special thanks to Preserve Title. Tim Hero, the president of Preserve Title, is an incredible partner with our firm, but also in this community in general. The amount of work he and his team did and the way that they've accommodated our community during a difficult time has been great for those who have been doing real estate transactions. Tim and his team do an incredible job with title insurance and supporting people in real estate transactions. So Tim and his whole team, thank you all very much for that. So with that, I want to get into the main event. I don't have as great of things to say as Jenna does. And so I want to get, Jenna, I'm going to get into asking you some questions. I know we've got people tuned in on Facebook, so I'll be watching that, and I've got the team helping me with those things too. And we'll be sorting through some of the questions that we've got there. And so we'll ask those during the time. But I want to just start out with, if you don't mind, give us a quick rundown of what's going on at the EDF, what's keeping you busy right now, and what are the people who are watching right now on Facebook or social media, what should they know about the EDF that you guys are working on? Because what you're doing is so important.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And by the way, let me just start by saying I'm glad that you're the one that's having to multitask with the Facebook chat and all of that. Because if working remotely has been any sign, I am just not the multitasker I thought I was with all of the phone calls and multiple Zooms or Microsoft Teams. It's really been just a fascinating environment to work in. And obviously, I know I'm not unique there. We're all living and working in those environments. So again, I'm glad that's you. Regarding the EDF, thank you so much for allowing the opportunity to provide a commercial. And obviously you all are investors, key investors of our operation. So thank you for that. But the EDF is a private public organization that has been around in San Antonio for over 40 years. And our mission over the last several years, decades, really hasn't evolved. It's been about jobs. It's been about creating and retaining high quality jobs within the San Antonio region. But as you mentioned, here of late, our strategies for delivering on that mission have evolved. And so typically folks think of the EDF as it relates to the headlines about large attraction deals or corporate relocations. Last year, opportunities to land big deals like Navistar manufacturing facility or Aishin, a large Toyota supplier. Those are typically the deals that get the headlines, and that's typically what EDF is known for and respected for. But behind the scenes, we also have a robust business retention and expansion program, which calls on us to engage with the local organizations to make sure that they are as competitively positioned as possible. And those are organizations across a variety of industries and obviously a variety of sizes. And here of late, in the situation that we've been in, we have turned our attention to focusing specifically on the rescue phase, if you will. If you think about being in rescue phase, moving into recovery, and then obviously full rebuild of the economy, we really, over the last few weeks, last couple of months, we've been in rescue mode, and that has called on us to engage with primarily our small businesses that are being impacted the hardest in this situation, and industries like hospitality, restaurants, et cetera.
Well, speak to that if you don't mind, Jenna, and that's perfect. Tell us about, what have the impacts been? Like, what have you all tracked as the impact so far because of COVID in general? What's it looking like in our community in that way?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, we've never dealt with anything like this before. And when I say we, it's not just San Antonio, it's not just the state of Texas or the country. The world hasn't dealt with both the health and economic crisis simultaneously. And we're dealing with that right now. And of course, it hasn't spared any San Antonio businesses, large and small, and it hasn't spared any San Antonians. So as it relates to businesses, again, across industries, a variety of sizes, all of these different organizations have had to rethink their business continuity strategies, their operational plans, and the majority of organizations have moved to remote or virtual working environments, right? And that's new for a lot of organizations. Even USAA, their CEO told me the other day that they're at 98% remote work. That is unheard of for an organization of that size. And I know it's the first time they've ever done anything like that. But on the individual side, this is typically where it hits the hardest, right? But if you look at how San Antonians have been impacted, citing Workforce Solutions Alamo data, since the onset of the crisis in about early March to the end of April, not even accounting for May, we've seen 167,000 unemployment claims. And those are the folks that are getting through. Those are the folks with, access to internet or that moved quickly out of the gates to make those phone calls and apply for unemployment. 167,000. Of those, about 26%, as you can imagine, are in hospitality and food service accommodations, because with the different social distancing measures that I think we would all argue have been valid and warranted, but they still limited specifically that industry. And Visit San Antonio, I know, is being hit hard because of a lack of the hotel tax, the occupancy tax there. But that's just a little bit about how individuals are being impacted. The average by month for last year was between 2,000 and 3,000 per month. And we're looking at 2 months and we're looking at 167,000. That's a big deal. But, I liked your stats. I mean, obviously, these impacts are real, right? They're hitting home, they're hitting these businesses. they're impacting San Antonians. But I like how you led with positive stats, because I think that, there's a silver lining, and there is something to be learned for every situation like this. Every crisis we should learn from, and we should be better for. And San Antonio's economy is resilient. We've got a collaborative community. We've got a fighter mentality, and spirit in us. And I'm confident that we will rebound from this greater than we've ever been.
I completely agree from what we've seen, and we get the privilege of getting to work with a lot of people, a lot of different industries, and I know you do too. What have you seen from the business community, and maybe specifically on how people are banding together? There's a lot of people trying to do a lot of things, but coming together, I think, is what makes it the most powerful. What are you seeing some of our biggest business leaders in this community doing? And is there any kind of recommendation on how people can kind of be part of that? We'll all get out of this together. There's no doubt about it. What are you seeing our biggest business leaders doing in our community? Because there's some awesome people doing awesome things.
That's exactly right. In San Antonio, we're such a unique model for delivering on economic development services or workforce services. If you think about, the number of school districts we have, or the fact that we have 15 universities within the MSA, and even, chambers and economic development entities. And I don't think anybody would argue that each and every one of these organizations is well-intentioned, right? And especially at the onset of the crisis, everybody leaned in, and we were trying to figure out, how to support our respective industries and our sectors, and how we were going to get through this, and obviously move into reopening the economy into full recovery. And we're seeing folks rally together like we've never seen before. And it's so reassuring. It makes you feel good. For me, if I was sleeping at night, if I didn't have work to keep me up, it would make me sleep better. But I have seen specifically on the business side of things that our chambers, we have the EDF mobilized what we're calling a business response and recovery team. We have all the large chamber CEOs, all of the large industry association CEOs like Cassandra Mate from VSA, or Ray Chavez from the Manufacturers Association. And we're just jumping on these weekly Zooms, and we're talking about what we're seeing and what we're all doing. Obviously, one, that streamlines our efforts and it eliminates duplication and redundancy, but it also makes for a better product when we come together and when we unite in a very real way. I think the biggest rallying cry for the business community right now is the Greater Safer Together pledge. So without getting into too much of the detail on our economic transition team report, the governor has obviously communicated that statewide we are moving to reopen the economy. And locally, the mayor and the judge have really, by the way, I think been working very well together, and they are totally leading from the front here, and they're just the right folks to be leading us at this time. But what they did is they deployed a bifurcated approach, if you will. So we had a group of health professionals, and look at their resumes. My goodness, it makes me feel like such an underachiever, all these Ivy League doctors with 10 degrees. It's unreal. But we had these health professionals building out the risk profile or the risk assessment by industries as we were looking to reopen. And then the other group to balance it out was the economic transition team. So the HTT and the ETT, it's kind of confusing, but there was overlap, and it was so wonderful because we came together and we looked at their risk assessment and actually applied it to real industry. And we had business owners, large and small, and Kevin Vocal from Toyota was one of the co-chairs. And of course, he's bringing the best practice from Asian countries, right, that they're seeing, the Toyota playbook. And so we were able to bring that together and say, okay, with the announcements that the governor's making, how can we take what he's recommending and actually build out a playbook of guidelines or suggestions for our local industries to abide by? And so I think the governor had initially communicated 6 sectors. Our health transition team wanted us to look at 9. Our economic transition team said, no, we want 13 because we need a professional services component to that. We need construction. We have a robust construction real estate industry. We want manufacturing. And so our playbook that we ended up publishing was the most comprehensive. And of course, I'm biased, but it was the most comprehensive that I have seen. And it was perfectly aligned, even by way of formatting, to what the governor has planned. But the piece in there that is the rallying cry was the movement to instill consumer confidence in San Antonians. Because two things are very real. One, you can reopen the economy, you can reopen restaurants, but until you and Tim and others on this call feel comfortable getting out and spending money, the economy isn't going to be stimulated. And secondarily, a lot of what we do through Visit San Antonio to market San Antonio to tourists and conference goers it's not going to happen because of travel restrictions. And so if we can convince San Antonians or folks around the region to get out and feel confident going downtown or to the Pearl or to the museums, getting out to spend money, that consumer confidence is what's going to make or break us. And this pledge concept is really neat. It's stolen from the Texas Restaurant Association and some national efforts. And what we basically said is if you look at all the industry sector guidelines, what are the top few that rise up to the top, right? So wearing masks was one of them, hand sanitizer, social distancing. And if we can identify what those 7 protocols are that are the most prominent or prevalent throughout the sectors, that's our pledge. And so businesses like restaurants or museums or theaters or your company, your headquarters can take this pledge and say, you know what, we're in it together and we are going to be greater, safer together. And of course, there's a play on the SA and the visual treatment, right? We had to brand it effectively. Visit San Antonio and my EDF team made sure of that. But I think the more folks that can go out and take that pledge and just put a window clean up on your, your front door, I think it just shows that we're in it together, and it visually embodies what San Antonio is all about and that collaborative spirit.
I think that's great. You can count on us taking that pledge. We're in there with you, and the branding on that's fantastic. So touche to your team for that. I think it's amazing. We'll make sure we get the word out to our team too, just to guide people to where that pledge is, because it is so important. Consumer confidence, as you said, is so paramount. And again, not to oversell the positivity here, we just are seeing good movement in our industry, but I know that needs to permeate throughout our whole community, and supporting these businesses and the way that you guys are doing that and facilitating that, I think is amazing. Jenna, help us with when we are interacting with businesses, or if you just had a message for a small business that's looking for resource, where do you point them to? That might be a tough question to answer because there's lots of different industries and lots of different places to send people, but any words of wisdom there for, the small businesses or even large businesses that we're coming across on how they can be plugged into the efforts that you guys are doing?
Yeah, I have 2 very tangible and discrete areas or resource groups that I would direct them to. First and foremost, earlier we were talking about the alignment of the business community and how the chamber executives and industry association leaders have come together. Well, our workforce leaders have come together as well. Our top university leadership, Taylor Amy at UTSA, Dr. Matson at A&M San Antonio, and Mike Flores with Alamo Community Colleges, they've all come together to figure out how we can address some of the upskilling and training requirements for San Antonians when they actually look to come back into the workforce to potentially new jobs or jobs that have been automated further. So that's happening. Our regional partners are convening regularly and talking about best practices and where we can go forward. And the public sector partners are convening as well and benchmarking with the private sector. And I've never seen a better sense of collaboration between the private sector, universities and/or academic leadership, and the public sector. And with that, if you were to look at the economic transition team report, there's a lot of information in there specifically about support for small businesses. And again, in all of the feedback, you can really bucket the services into 2 significant categories. One category is financial literacy and/or business acumen, strategic planning, continuity planning, et cetera, those types of services that all businesses need. And the second was really access to materials and the specific safety PPE that's required to be in compliance with the governor's mandates and local recommended guidelines. And so on the former, we've been working very closely with the UTSA Small Business Development Center. In fact, they, in partnership with our local banking community, actually helped us deploy what we're referring to as the COBRA. It's the COVID Business Response Accelerator. And they are focused specifically on going out into the community, engaging with these small businesses that weren't quick out of the gates to pursue these PPP monies and the EIDL loans and a lot of the different SBA programs. But beyond just the temporary fix that is access to those monies to stay afloat, the long-term support that is, providing the guidance to build out these financial statements and providing the strategic planning support, business planning support, et cetera, will make these small businesses, again, successful today, but also successful well into the future. And then secondarily, on the access to PPE, one of the recommendations in the Economic Transition Team report was to develop some sort of supplier consortium between our public sector partners, so the city and the county, and potentially even surrounding cities and counties, to buy in and leverage their buying power to procure the top 3 PPE items. I believe that the city and the county are focused on masks, hand sanitizer, and no-touch thermometers. And the idea is to kind of leverage the food bank model where you'll have mass distribution for small businesses that are under 25 employees, 25 or less, and that they would kind of drive by in a food service or food bank distribution model where you're almost handing them like PPE in a bag. Again, there would also be collateral about the pledge, and once you register and take the pledge, you can have access to the PPE. But those are the 2 very discrete paths, the UTSA Small Business Development Center, COBRA, and then when the city and the county go live with this PPE distribution, that's where I would send these small businesses.
I love that. The Cobra is more good branding. I think that's so applicable. I think that's perfect. And the resources, I mean, Jenna, I got to say again, like the resources that are available and what you all are pushing our community, I just don't know how many people know about it. I just think it's really, we should be so proud of it as a community of what's really available and the banding together. So I've got a question for you based on what you've observed. And I know you gave a little bit of kind of future casting there with how people will work going forward. You're seeing all these different industries and how people are adapting. I'm interested on your take on how you see San Antonio working differently. I'll give you our own quick story. So we have 150 awesome real estate professionals in San Antonio market and MSA. We meet once a month in one big room and we have a meeting. And I've always been really proud of this meeting. I'm like, oh, I'm sure everybody wants to come to it and they're going to want to come in person forever. We're very social people, Jenna, very social. The overwhelming message I've received from everybody is, Jay, let's make all these meetings virtual from now on, because we've been doing them virtually instead. And we found that it is easier to get to the meeting. There's no sort of battling a little bit of traffic or having to get ready too early in the morning. These are normally early morning meetings. People are liking doing them virtually. And so going forward, I'm confident we will modify how we do meetings, but probably be more efficient and effective, and deliver kind of better support for our real estate agents, better support for our clients. And so we're trying to take advantage of using this as an opportunity to be more effective and efficient. So are you seeing that in other businesses in San Antonio, and/or how do you see San Antonio working differently going forward, in a positive way, like what we're going to be doing differently than we did before?
Oh, yes, is the short answer. So I'm seeing that across different businesses. I have the privilege of getting a chance to work with leadership at HEB and USAA and Valero and Frost. And they're actually, those CEOs are saying the exact same thing. And really, they're not in a rush to get back into their headquarter operations because productivity levels for the majority of companies have either increased or they've remained flat. And then meanwhile, a lot of leaders, I'm sure you're thinking the same way I know I am for my team, we're thinking about access to childcare and/or schools that are still closed. What does that look like for our employees if we do move to return back into the office setting? For me, as I think about it with our small organization, really what is the value add of returning into the office? And here I am sitting in my office, right? I come in about once a week. But what's the value add? And it's what you were talking about. It's the ability to sit around a table and to brainstorm and have that camaraderie and interaction. And the reality is we can't do that just yet, right? And so why not just extend out that virtual environment if you can, right? If it's applicable. Now there are essential businesses and manufacturing operations out there. HEB's an example, and Valero's another example, where you do need to get back into the office, or you do need to get back to that manufacturing facility. And obviously the world has changed for those operations as well, right? So the physical distancing, the mask, all of the different protocol required to even enter your facility. I think that's going to change, and it's going to be consistent, and it's going to change for the foreseeable future. And then coming back to the EDF, you know, what's interesting, and I'm sure your team has deployed very creative solutions in this virtual environment. But if you think about our core business on the attraction side, that typically requires us to do a lot of traveling, right? So my business development team and I travel around the world. We're in certain domestic geographies, we're in certain international geographies, and that face-to-face interaction has been the majority of the way that we build out our sales pipeline.
That's right.
That's all changed, right? We haven't been able to travel all year. And so my team is deploying extremely creative virtual engagement opportunities for outbound marketing activities, but also for site visits, right? Virtual site visits. Because when these companies, or when the individuals that are purchasing homes or commercial real estate, when they're looking at the potential real estate or the community, they want to see it and feel it. And so we're having to figure out ways to do that virtually as well. To be honest, it's not even really a challenge. I think it's really forcing us to modernize beyond what we would have otherwise been doing. And I think it's a great thing. As long as we're prioritizing the health and safety of our employees and our customers, I think we'll all be better for it.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's the thing that's impressed me the most in general, especially in our area, is that people have valued other people's safety and health and well-being. That's a super heartwarming thing. I don't know why I'm not, I guess I shouldn't ever be surprised by that, but it's really come on strong. Some people have had to do things in a harder way, more difficult way, less convenient way, but have done it anyway. And I think that's super commendable. I also have to say, I think we've got to give credit to our local lenders. You know, I don't know how you've seen that, but you know, I've got to give credit to the ones I've had direct interaction with, banks like Bank of San Antonio, Frost Bank, you mentioned, Broadway, and several others. I mean, the amount of PPP loans they processed, unbelievable. You know, we're proud to be affiliated with Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union. I don't even know how many PPP loans they process, but is really getting in and helping our community that way. And I think they've been working 24 hours a day. I think if you've been a lender, you know, and you're embedded in this community, you probably didn't sleep for the last like 2 months because they're just on overdrive. And some of us are in our PJs at home doing work. But boy, our lenders have really stepped up. Is that what you've seen? I mean, I've been in awe of them.
At the risk of being blasphemous, I just want to say, like, amen, brother. I mean, they have been amazing. We were able to mobilize what we refer to as a bankers lenders roundtable about 4 weeks or so ago. It was actually before the PPP program went live. But David Boney with Broadway Bank and David McGee with Amagi wanted to bring together our top lenders in the community. You know, typically these folks compete, right? But this is what makes San Antonio unique, that they wanted to come together. They wanted to benchmark, and they wanted to talk about how we could get the monies in the hands of our small businesses that needed the relief the most, right? And so we convened that group a couple of times actually over the course of, I think it was 2 back-to-back weeks, as they were integrating the PPP program, and they were trying to figure out what the different loan programs would look like. And you know what's interesting is just last week, Frost Bank, Phil Green directly hosted a forum with us. It was like a train the trainer type concept where we pulled together the small business development support groups. Think about like SAGE on the east side, or Southside First, the West Side Economic Development Corporation, and then of course UTSA. We brought them together. We had over 40, by the way, his team pulled this off in like 24 hours, but we had about 45 different individuals, including some of my team members who engaged directly with these small businesses, the city, the county's teams. And Phil and his team walked through a train the trainer presentation where they were basically saying, look, everybody knows that they want the PPP, But what's happening is they're coming at us and applying with incomplete applications. So then what happens is the banks are backlogged. So what you're talking about where they haven't slept, it's
Yeah.
because, Phil had bankers having to convert zip codes to 9-digit zip codes, or Googling NAICS codes, because there were a set of requirements on the PPP application that weren't called out initially. And so 40% of the applications that were submitted were incomplete. And so the bankers were having to work through this backlog. And so this train the trainer concept was basically for all these different groups that are doing the pre-lender handholding services. Here's what we need before the application gets to us. That will allow us to streamline, and not just Frost, it allows every group, Bank of San Antonio, Randolph Brooks, all of these different lenders, to streamline the process and serve more San Antonio businesses. And this allowed them to also take on more clients. At the very beginning, a lot of banks had to hunker down, and they had to say, look, we've got to take care of our own first. Once we do that and breathe, we can look at servicing other clients. And now I think they're getting to a point in time where they can do that. But it's because they didn't just say, let's work the process. I mean, folks like Bank of San Antonio, Amegy, Frost, and these different groups said, who else do you need us to take on, Jenna? Refer these folks if we need to help them. They weren't looking for the processing fees that were nominal. In fact, Frost is donating the processing fees back to the food bank. So long-winded response, I think our community bank saved the day.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. They are heroes for sure. And yeah, proud to know lots of them who did just amazing stuff for our community. So I've got two hard ones for you, Jenna. I think these are hard questions, but I want to ask them to you because I feel confident you'll have some good answer with it, but I know they're not easy. So with the efficiencies that some people are gaining, that shines a new light on the need for certain things. So let's take office space, for example. Like you said, we've got big employers in San Antonio that have big square footage of office space. Maybe now they see that you can do this efficiently, from home. I know when we look nationwide, I think it was Google today, I might be misquoting, that said you can work from home indefinitely if you'd like. Some people are pushing that way out in the future. I know this is somewhat of a double-edged sword. You've got positivity that we're more efficient, but potentially now things and infrastructure that's been built to support the way that we used to do it is different. Do you have any insight on that, on maybe some of the effects or how the changing economy or the change in the way that we're being efficient might affect some of our industry in San Antonio, if that makes sense?
No, it's a great question. And I don't think anybody has that entirely figured out, because different leaders are making these individual decisions on what makes the most sense for their respective organizations. But we've tried to look out ahead at what the impacts would be for sectors across San Antonio. Obviously, real estate's one of those, and there are downstream impacts of virtual remote work, but there are also impacts of basically being thrusted into the effects of automation, right? And so if you look at just real estate and even carving that piece of it out, if you look at manufacturing, or even you look at hospitality, right? Some of those jobs that are being impacted today won't exist 3, 4, 5 months down the road when these employers look to hire back these impacted employees that have been laid off or furloughed. And so we're trying to get a feel for the direct impacts, but then we're also trying to get a feel for how these different industry leaders will make decisions for the long term. And then what we all need to do is pivot our strategies to accommodate. And so thinking in terms of kind of the process by which we get out of rescue, move into recovery, and move into rebuild. I think each one of us as leaders, you will have to do this, I will do this, all the leaders across San Antonio are going to have to rethink their value proposition based off of obviously where their industry is heading, but also what their consumers are expecting. And it's an interesting dynamic. I don't have it figured out today, but rest assured that the way that we all operate for the foreseeable future is going to change drastically.
I think that's a perfect response. You did great with that. And as a side note, you're already getting lots of kudos in the Facebook chat that we need you to run for public office. So
oh no, I won't do
about
it.
That as you noodle on that as you make your future plans, we would love that.
It's probably my mother putting that.
Well, she's if your mother or not, she's right. I think we need smart people like you doing these things, Jenna. So this is perfect. And I'm with you on that. Doing business differently is going to have to be the thing that we do. But the thing that I've gotten into lots of discussions on in the last few weeks is that's par for the course. We forget that industry has changed. We forget how much our life has evolved. Not to give bank love all night long, but how different are banks now than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago? The way they operate, the floor plans, the footprints of their offices, how they interact with clients, everything being online, doing online banking. Again, not to sound too mushy about our own community, we're an innovative community, and will we have some square footage changes or demands in some of our businesses? Yes, but will that be made up by somebody else taking that square footage? Probably so. For new industry, new business, and the things that will spin out of this, I think are endless with the great minds that we have in our community. So I think that's perfect. Okay, here's another one.
I was going to, can I layer in on that?
Please, yes.
And not to try to exploit any challenges, but we're talking about the silver lining here. I humbly believe that if you think about EDF's industries of focus for the San Antonio region, that include cybersecurity, manufacturing, and bioscience, specifically on the R&D side. Think about the impacts of COVID, and going forward, as we continue to work on recovering our local economy, think about our prospects for business attraction. I'm pretty bullish on the fact that there will be a lot of cybersecurity companies that are looking to support this move to a virtual work environment. And there is no community across the country outside of the capital region in DC that can compete with the cybersecurity assets and ecosystem that we have in San Antonio. On the manufacturing side, there are going to be several companies that look to onshore and or reshore, and a lot of companies like HEB and a lot of food and beverage manufacturing facilities and manufacturing facilities of all type that look to bring their suppliers closer in, right? Given the business continuity pause and recalibration. And then on the bioscience side, first of all, I think that the partnership between the precision therapeutics, basically the big four, I refer to them, UTSA, Texas Biomed, SWERI, and UT Health, I guarantee you that we will be identifying diagnostic therapies for coronavirus in San Antonio. And I hope that we're first to market with some of these innovative technologies. But those are our three industries, Jay, and I'm super excited about. I mean, yeah, I know that this is a tough time, right? And I know that this is a health crisis, and people are being impacted financially, and people are being impacted physically. I get that, and I understand it. But I also believe that San Antonio's economy is going to come out better positioned going forward because of the work that we have done to build up the ecosystems around those specific target industries. So I'm pretty excited about when we move forward, albeit virtually. When we move forward, I think that our value proposition as a region is going to be that much more robust.
That is so true. And, we could probably do a whole session just on Texas Biomed, and you're talking about the cure being found out here. The resources just in that one group is just off the charts. And again, I probably take this for granted. I've been privileged to go tour that facility and all the stuff that they do, but the brightest minds in the world are there and working on these sorts of cures. So it gives me a lot of confidence that I live so close to those resources. I'm proud of what they do. So here's my next hard question. And this is the crystal ball question. But again, you're on the ground seeing how it all goes. Give us some idea, if you can, about moving into normal life. I know I could probably break this down by weeks. The first couple of weeks, it's when are we going to get back to work? And then in a week or two after that, is that how long is this going to take? And now it's sort of, okay, we know our life's going to be altered and it won't be the same. But when it comes to normal life, how do you seeing that in the future? What do you, when you're hearing businesses, like I know I always give my HEB love on this thing because I love just about everything, if not everything HEB does. But I always look at what HEB is going to do when opening offices and how they're working in the community and the safety precautions they take. What are you seeing when it comes back to normal life and how people are treating that? And I know you gave us a hint on this before, but kind of when and how, do you see normal life going back in San Antonio?
Mm-hmm.
Is this
Well,
an
let me
end of the
say,
summer sort of thing? Is this a next year sort of thing? It's always going to be a different sort of thing? What do you think?
well, first, let me agree with you that Craig Boyan and HEB have been the benchmark for business continuity
Hmm.
and leadership during this crisis. I mean, they have really leaned in, and they're Texans helping Texas campaign. The governor even adopted it, right, in
Yeah.
his reopening plan. And so I am so proud of what our HEB has been able to do, not just for San Antonio, but around the state of Texas. And I'm going to digress, and then I'm going to come back to your crystal ball. But what's also neat to see when you talk about HEB or you talk about the large banks or USA or Valero, in addition to these companies reworking and pivoting their entire operations, and of course, like even looking at Valero, I mean, they're being impacted financially. But you know what? Each and every one of those organizations, including Whataburger and the Spurs and all of our larger corporates, they have stepped up to contribute philanthropically to the food bank and to Meals on Wheels and all of these different organizations, even to the bioscience research that we're talking about today. I was looking at my numbers. I think it's north of 15 million in aggregate that I've already seen these large companies contribute just in the matter of the last few weeks. And that doesn't even include the United Way and the Area Foundation joint COVID relief fund, which I think is north of 5 million. They did a big telethon for that with Harvey Nation and others. So I am proud of HEB. I am proud of USAA and Valero. I'm proud of all of our large corporates for stepping up and rallying together. But your question was about our new norm. I was joking with my husband about this because if I had a dime for every time I said new normal or lean in or
Yes.
pandemic, it's kind of like the Andy Cohen, since this is a late night Facebook Live, it's kind of like the Andy Cohen drinking game that he plays in his show. For however many times you say those words, right, you have to take a drink. That's kind of what I was thinking about. But I don't think we are ever going to return to normalcy as we knew it. I think the world is going to be different. And when we talk about, all of these different leaders having to rethink our strategies for return to work, I think we as people are going to be forever changed. Our culture of hugging and kissing on the cheek here in San Antonio, or even shaking hands, I think all of that's going to change because hygiene and physical distancing is going to become the norm. And so as it relates to, getting back to normal, I would define the new normal. There's your drinking cue. But I would define the new normal as some sort of interaction where stay home orders are no longer referenced and we don't feel like we are being limited, but rather that we are being empowered to go out. More of the positivity, like the greater, safer together narrative. We're being empowered to go out. We're being armed and we are confident because we feel like we are adhering to these different social distancing and safety protocols required. And I'm hopeful that that happens within the next couple of months, right? We've seen that hair salons have opened back up and everybody's being thoughtful and everybody's implementing social distancing. We've seen that, tanning salons and those types of operations are opening back up, in addition to obviously restaurants and venues, those types of operations. And so as the governor and our local elected officials move to reopen the economy, they will do so in a responsible way, but they can only mandate so much at the state level or even at the county or city level. I think that if each one of us took it on ourselves to not only protect our health and safety and our family's health and safety, but to prioritize your neighbor's health and safety, if we took it seriously, I do think that we could go out and we can interact and we can do more together and return to that normalcy and or the new normal. But it's never going to be what it was before. But I'm confident that within the next couple of months, we will find our new norm. There have been talks, and Fauci will talk about, the return of the virus coming later in the year. I think we have to be prepared to modulate. Here's wherein there's been all sorts of dynamic with the Attorney General and our local elected officials about who can mandate what and whose executive orders trump whose. A lot of political posturing. I think it's cute. But I think, again, it comes back to us and how we can be responsible, but how our local elected officials can continue to monitor the granular health data so that they can inform us. Because at the state level, we can say that we're opening, but only our local county or municipal leaders can actually track the granular data so that we can modulate. Because 2 to 3 weeks from now, if we're seeing a trend upwards into a negative space that we don't want to be, I mean, obviously with increased testing, you're going to see increased confirmed cases. But if we're starting to see what we don't want to see as we reopen the economy, there has got to be a way to manage that so that we don't have to shut down again. If we can do that, if we can balance it and we can reopen in a responsible way, managed at the local level in alignment with state orders, I think that's going to be our new normal. And again, I'm confident that'll happen in the next couple of months.
That's great. I like that prediction. I am sad about the decrease in handshakes and kisses, though. I mean, I feel like that's kind of par for the course for our industry. Try to give out a lot of handshakes and kisses. So, I mean, I'm going to really have to work on a different strategy for bonding with people instantaneously. Actually, it might be a welcome change for those that I aggressively come after and try to hug when they're not prepared for it. So
it'll eliminate, you know, when you have those awkward hugs and you don't know if you're supposed to. So it'll eliminate that, you know.
Well, I'm kind of tall, so I mean, I come in on people sometimes a little too rapidly. So, you know, I just need to be a new Jay, and that's okay. Change is good for all of us. Okay, so I think I've got one more solid question for you, Jenna, if you're okay with that.
Of course.
And that is, and you've given us so much good info for businesses, where they can connect. I still love Cobra, UTSA, incredible. We've got so many great people watching right now. How can someone help? You know, as we kind of wrap it up, if you're an individual, what's the best thing you can do? It's not even just a business, but an individual. We've got great individuals watching. What can people do to help? Is it participating in one of those organizations you mentioned? Because I know people want to and sometimes don't know how to as an individual. We think, oh, we can't do that much. I'm not HEB and can't do what Harvey does and all these things, but they can, but sometimes don't know where. Any suggestion, recommendation on how can one person do something right now to make an impact on our awesome, incredible community that we're privileged to be in?
I love it. Can I give you a few? Just because I can't prioritize just one.
I'll take extra credit on these answers. Yes, extra credit.
All right. Number one, protect yourselves and protect your neighbors. Wear a mask. I think it's the responsible thing to do, and it's the respectful thing to do. Number two, contribute to the food bank. $1, $5, $500, whatever you can do. Right now, the food bank is providing a very, very critical service. And unfortunately, you know, we can talk all evening long about the income inequalities within our San Antonio region, and they are magnified at current in this new environment, in this new normal.
Yeah.
So it's extremely important that we contribute to the food bank, because those families need access to the services the food bank is providing. The third is, when we launch this new consortium for access to the safety PPE, we're going to need volunteers. So just like the food bank actually distributes mass material, food, we're going to need to do that same thing. And I was talking to the city staff the other day. They're trying to pull this off. And they're actually leveraging the food bank for logistics, design, and implementation. But they're probably going to need about 500 volunteers. And of course, we'll call in the large corporates, but I'm going to call you, Jay, because I think that we can get some of your agents out to help. And obviously, we'll follow the physical distancing requirements, but that's an easy way to support our small businesses. I'm of the mindset that you can have all sorts of social relief for individuals. But if we can support our businesses, if we can get people back to work, paychecks stimulate an economy, right? Sure. If we can get people back to work, earning paychecks, the rest of it, it might not be quick, but the rest of it will take care of itself downstream. And so, you know, access to the PPE for these small businesses, any sort of small business support will help. And so those are the areas that I think every individual can engage and provide help. I'd also say, in fact, I'm happy to share with you and Katie the links to Greater Safer Together, the links to the Cobra program with UTSA, and share them out on your social media. You never know what small businesses need access to those resources. It was interesting when all of this started to happen, even my hairstylist was calling saying, hey, I'm trying to access the PPP. Where do I go, Jenna? So I became kind of a direct financial services agent, connecting these different folks. And you've got to do what you got to do. That's why I'm in the business that I'm in, taking care of businesses of all size. But I think it's important for us to kind of figure out where we can individually support, and volunteering and contributing to those organizations would be valuable.
I think those are incredible suggestions. And yes, please call on us. We want to be partnered with you in all those things, because I think they're great. That food bank alone is worthwhile. People can get online and do that now. And yeah, we want to help with the PPE. We'll help you distribute. We've got lots of people with cars. We'll do whatever you need us to do.
Excellent.
Jenna, this has been so great. Is there anything else you've got for us, or anything I missed in asking you questions? Again, can't thank you enough for not just being on this, but for the work you're doing. You're giving us way extra hours. I'm sure you've been doing this since 6 a.m. and it's already 7 p.m. But anything that we missed that's important, we want to just make sure we're helping you do what you do best. Anything we can help you with.
Yeah, I think that you asked great questions. The live audience asked good questions. I think this was an incredible session, and I'm just happy to participate and happy to be involved. And to the extent that you and your different networks can continue to talk about the positive narrative and how San Antonio will bounce back from this greater than ever, I think that would be very, very much appreciated, not just by me, but all San Antonians, because we truly are going to rally together to move forward. And we've got to be real about the impacts. I want to be transparent. I know that there's going to be about a $15 billion economic contraction this year. We realize that. But what are we going to do about it, right? We know there are impacts, but what are we going to do moving forward? If we can continue to have the real conversations, but also talk about our positive positioning post-COVID or post this social distancing situation that we're in today, I think we're all going to be better for it. So I appreciate you providing me the platform to have this conversation and interact with your networks. But please be an echo chamber and continue to spread that word to everybody that you know and everybody that you interact with.
We'll absolutely do that. If we're known for anything besides hopefully selling a lot of great real estate and representing our clients well, is that we communicate a lot. And so talking and spreading the news is not something we fall short on. So we will make sure we do that. So Jenna, thank you again. This has been tremendous. Thank you to the EDF for those efforts. We are so proud to be a part of that with you. And the small way we do, you do the big work. Thank you again, Preserve Title. Thanks to all our, I got to give the shameless plug to my own firm. We have incredible agents and incredible staff who are out there pushing every day, helping the community and doing what they do best. So I want to thank them too. Jenna, appreciate everything. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you again for everybody that tuned in and asked thoughtful questions. Really impactful.